Facebook. Oh yeah, you okay. And we are live on Facebook. I'm going to go ahead and broadcast us out to our webinar friends. I'm so excited about having everybody in my kitchen today. Hey, Robbie, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. It's so good to see you. I'm just welcoming all our Facebook friends and our webinar friends, welcoming them into my kitchen and welcoming my, I hate to say it, my little brother into my kitchen, all the way from DC. And thank you so much for being here today. Lieutenant Arthur Davis. I already told you I can't call you Arthur. I'm gonna have to
I
call you
know
Robbie
it's
during
fine.
this
Robbie works.
Okay, but it's Lieutenant Arthur Davis from the Washington D.C. Metropolitan Police Force. You've been in the force over 20 years now. And so I have to tell my audience that, but also that you are active duty Air Force as well. So you are serving our country and our community in so many ways. And so thank you for being here and thank you for that service.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah, well, and let's just jump into it. We only have a half hour. I know a lot of folks want to hear from you. And let's just get with it with, with the history of police in our country, with the moment that we're in. It is a hot topic for so many people. It's a kitchen table conversation for a lot of families. And I'll tell you, for a lot of folks in the Black community, policing is not the first career choice. And so I just want to start by asking you, what made you want to join the force and become a police officer?
Well, you're absolutely right. In inner city growing up, it's not, or any city growing up, it's not necessarily the first choice for young Black men. You make choices based upon your income, based upon your family situation, based upon your skill set, and I think my decision to become a cop was all of those combined. I knew I was good at helping people. Well, I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I was good at solving problems, and I feel like police officers are bound and should be most of the time solving problems. And that was just something that always attracted me. That's what attracted me to the military and to the police force as well. I thought that fit my personality and I could succeed at helping people. Yeah. And thankfully, these last 20 years, I've gotten to help a whole lot of folks. I always say that people encounter police at their worst moments. So it's up to us to make those moments as better as we can. So that's what we try to do.
That's true. And thank you for saying that, because I think a lot of folks do, we encounter police when you're at your sometimes at your worst. And just to give you my experience, we were just talking before we went on air about my accident and how, just my pain level, and how my pain level is of course better than the day I was on the ground after the accident. And of course I encountered first responders and police officers, and they made my day a whole lot better. I mean, I just have to tell you that the folks who responded to our accident were just amazing. And I'm just thankful for them each and every day. So thank you for putting that out there. You've really lived at this intersection of race and justice for 20 plus years. And so I think your perspective is so unique, your voice is so unique. And so in this moment that we're talking about reimagining what policing looks like, reimagining the culture and the funding, what are your thoughts on that? And maybe what are some of the things you've seen in that conversation about reimagining?
I think reimagining is a great word, because you do have to. And in all businesses and facets of life, you have to, at a certain point when things aren't going right, you have to reevaluate the situation. And policing is no different. Every day we strive to get better. We strive to get better through training. We strive to get better through education. And sometimes we need more, and we need a push. And defunding is a broad topic. It's really it really depends on the department. It depends on what your overall goal is. So if your overall goal is to make the police department better, I'm all for it, because no police department is perfect, and we all can get better in various areas of our training and our execution of our training. So I think that conversation is one that needs to be had. It's going to be had. Obviously it's we're past the point of asking for it, and now the conversation is going to be had on many, many different levels. So I think that's good. I think all positive change is good. Whether you whether you like it or not. You know, I tell my people all the time, the only thing constant in this job is change. So
Yeah.
why not make it a positive change? Why not make it a change that helps everyone that we're trying to help every day?
Mhm.
I think that would be beneficial to everybody.
Absolutely. And I think some of the things I've seen come out of your department with that conversation around reimagining happened even before this moment that we're in. And one of the things I thought maybe you could talk about is some of the training that you do for new recruits. And part of that is 10 hours of training. A part of that new recruit 10-hour training is going to the African American History and Culture Museum. And so how did that kind of come about?
That came about a few years ago. We were actually way ahead of the curve on that one. As soon as the museum was made available, and opened up to the public, um, DC took advantage of that, and we figured that if we want our recruits, our new officers, to know about DC and to actually empathize and know what our citizens go through, then they need to know what all Black Americans have gone through. And that museum does a great job of showing them, our professors that are involved in the program, and the museum does a great job in showing and teaching our young officers who come from all over the country. See, that's the
Mhm.
thing. We don't just recruit from DC, we recruit from all over the country. So if you're coming from California, if you're coming from Washington, you need to know what African Americans have dealt with over these last few hundred years, and they do a great job of that. I think it's vitally important. They come out with a totally different perspective than what they had before coming in, and it's good. It
Mhm.
In order, if you want someone to treat you right, they have to know what you've been through in a
Yeah.
certain way. And I think that museum does a great job, and the teachers we have involved do a great job of showing the Black experience to
Mhm.
people who didn't know about it, who weren't taught about it in school.
So that kind of brings me to another question because hearing that you guys were doing this, again, years ago, this wasn't new. This wasn't something you thought of last Thursday. I'm, being here in the Seattle, like just outside of Seattle in the suburbs, Snohomish County, we don't have as large of a Black population as somewhere like DC Metro, but some of the pushback I've heard from things like having ethnic studies in our schools or having police get more racial bias training is that, oh, it's not a big deal. There's no more systemic racism. That's all in the past. I guess from your perspective, is that all in the past? Is that something we just wash over? I mean, is it something that continually needs to be talked, especially in relation to law enforcement?
It's definitely not in the past. You can't. It vexes me when I hear people say stuff like that, because as non-Black people, how can you tell Black people that something's in the past? That's ugh. But
Yeah.
no, yeah, it's frustrating because people want to get over things, and as humans, we want to get over things, and we want things to be in the past, but no, they're not. And the sooner you admit to that, then the sooner you are gonna, or the more you're gonna hear people's cries for help and people's cries for change.
Mhm.
If you're not listening because you think it's over, you've already shut the conversation down, and it makes it so much more difficult to have those difficult conversations about change.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely not over.
Thank you for that. I like that. That's vexing. Your phone like that too. Your phone's like, look, that's a great word though, because I get a little vexed sometimes when people tell me like my lived experience or what my kids go through, what my Black and brown children are going through isn't relevant anymore. Another issue that's come up with this conversation in this moment is the military equipment that some of our police departments get. And you being active Air Force, having just been deployed to Turkey, and getting, being back here stateside and being in a police department, what are your thoughts about the military equipment that gets surplus to local police departments?
Well, the surplus equipment, I understand the idea. They want us to be equipped for anything, right? We have to be ready for anything and everything. And we saw that during during the Navy Yard tragedy and during countless other tragedies around the nation where we need to be equipped. But using military weapons for that is not, in my opinion, just my opinion, it's not necessary.
Mm.
We have more than enough training and equipment and tactics that we can use to handle any situation. You know, my department is pretty large, and most large departments, we can handle it. So we don't necessarily need to show military force in those situations. So, you know, I like the gesture. I like the fact that, you know, we don't have to pay for the equipment, but other than that, it's really not necessary, especially when you're talking about surplus. Surplus means they didn't want it anymore.
I was say, is it the latest and greatest? Is this the newest stuff, or is it old?
Right. Right. It sounds like, when I hear the word surplus, it sounds like old stuff you didn't want anymore, and you bought something new that was better. Yeah. So if we were getting, you know, yeah, it just doesn't seem very necessary to me.
No, and I think so much, when I think about the conversation around policing, so much of what you do tends to be interacting with folks who are, you know, dealing with mental health issues, dealing with issues that certainly don't need a show of force, maybe at all, but certainly not to that level. And so, you know, part of that is, I know we have policing in schools through our student resource officers and different mechanisms. And as we're talking about reimagining, have there been any kind of unique ways that you're approaching that scenario now in the force that you're with, or just in general, what your thoughts are?
Yeah, I would personally like to see, I don't like the fact that we have to have police officers in schools in the first place, but history has shown us that sometimes you do. So we would all like, you know, the officer friendly program to come back. I didn't have that growing up, but I hear about it a lot in DC, and they had, you know, officer friendly. Who was you know, the friendly guy or gal who was around and kept stuff safe. And that's a perfect concept to me. But officer friendly doesn't have to be carrying a M4 or a rifle, or, you know, look like they're about to, you know, invade somewhere. So the softening up of the SROs, the giving them less than lethal options, that is something that police departments should explore. And I think it would bring a calm to the schools. It would change the opinions of young folks who right now don't trust the police, or, you know, don't trust us enough. So if we show them that, hey, we're not here to hurt anybody, we're not here to cause harm, and God forbid, we don't want to use force on anybody. So, you know, if we do have to do something and we use a less than lethal tactic, I think that goes a long way to improving the respect they have for us, improving our credibility, and letting everyone know that we're here to protect these kids. We're not here to hurt these kids. So I think less lethal options and any other ideas that we can come up with, just to make the kids feel safer and trust us more, would help.
Absolutely. And as a director, that's what I'm really striving towards, to having, you know, I would love a place where we don't have officers in our schools. You know, to me, that's a perfect world.
Right. Yep.
You know, it makes me feel old, that whole officer friendly, right? Because I remember when that was kind of you know, it's all well and good, and now it just feels more intense, and the conversation is intense, and the presence is more intense. It's not that anymore. And so it's a difficult conversation, but I think as we're reimagining school because of this public health crisis, I think reimagining policing, especially in our schools, has to also be reimagined.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we've got a great question from one of our listeners. They want to know what your feelings are about social workers in police cars. And I don't know if you have experience with that or opinions on it, but I know folks would love to hear it.
You said social
workers. So folks, you know, if you have, like, do you have mental health responders coming out with you, like, just to help?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So a lot of departments have employed programs in which the police officers are kind of cross-trained into social worker type roles. But I believe that having the actual professionals in the car would give the police officers a different perspective on the calls that they're responding to and how to address those particular issues. Unfortunately, mental health and responding to calls has really just become, I don't know how to say it, but it's, you often encounter mental health customers when you respond to calls for people in crisis. And police are a good option, but they're not the only option. So having mental health professionals on board to kind of guide us and show us what they would do, I would definitely be open to that, because it goes hand in hand. You know, I've met and encountered several, you know, hundreds of people in crisis. And as a police officer, all I can do is do what I was trained to do. But then you have to refer them to a mental health counselor later on. But it would be great to have them on the scene to kind of start that process already. That would be great.
I agree. I think that's part of when folks talk about that reimagining piece and that redirecting of funds, it's really putting more support into mental health professionals, and having them right there for you as a resource as an officer would be ideal, because that helps the whole community. We have another great question from one of our listeners. In your view, what would be most effective to enlist guardians instead of warriors into our police force? And I think what they're getting at is like, you know, you're a gentle soul. Like, I know you're my brother, you're a soul. You are more of a guardian. You want to help, you want to protect, you want to take care of, you want to problem solve. And some folks come at it from that warrior mentality, right? Like, I want a really big gun, or I want, you know, just something just a little more physical. So what's a good way to help folks who are at guardian heart versus a warrior? What's a good way to enlist them into the force?
Well, I think that starts with hiring, doing a proper, doing proper background checks, and really digging into people's, like, why do you want to be here? Why do you want to be a police officer? And really putting that into perspective before you hire them. Because if you know, once you hire a warrior, they're there. And we've constantly preached the warrior. The guardian. We call it sheepdog, right? The sheepdog that protects the flock. So it's the same type deal. And we really do preach it, but it's up to the individual police officer to want to be that, and to want to act in that manner. We do get a lot of our force from the military, and a lot of them are used to being warriors. But we really try and preach that they have to transition that into a service profession that only helps people. It's, you know, you're not there for war. You're not there for conflict. You're there to resolve. You're there to de-escalate. You're there to make things better than what you found them. But it really, honestly, it's difficult, because it depends on the individual officer and the individual cop that actually wants to do good. We can't train that into them. They have to want it. So changing a warrior into a guardian is difficult. But if we only hire guardians, then I think that'll alleviate a lot of those problems.
Yeah. So at the hiring point of, what you're saying, like at that hiring piece of it, knowing where.
Yeah, that's one way.
And I think even as I listen to you, it's, you know, I love having these kitchen table conversations, right? Because they're kitchen table, and it's such a hard topic, but it's so easy for me to talk with you about it, right? Like, you can talk about it. You're on the police force. I'm someone who really believes in this reimagining and rethinking policing, wanting to help our citizens, wanting to help our kids, wanting to help our community. But for whatever reason, when I, you know, leaving my kitchen table, it becomes such a more difficult conversation. And so I'm so thankful that you're here today, kind of showing folks, you know, the conversations that we have, because you can talk to somebody in law enforcement who is a police officer out thinking differently, which kind of leads me to my kind of, like, you know, one of the last questions, just about transparency, because so much of the issues that we see kind of on the force or different coming out, it feels like there's a lack of transparency. And so where are you on that issue of transparency, and really that the concept of radical transparency, of just that zero tolerance for anything going on that is wrong on the force, and how do we get there?
Well, I think a lot of departments, including my own, have gone to, you know, body cameras, as you know. So you have several levels of review. So it's not just internal review. We have a lot of external review when it comes to not just force incidents, but every incident. If something needs to be investigated, it's going to be investigated based upon the videos and the other evidence. So I am totally a fan of transparency. I teach my guys, if you don't want someone to know you did it, then don't do it. Because, it's these days, even before cell phone cameras, you had witnesses and things. So you just don't, if it's wrong, just don't do it. And we have to really preach that to our people in order for them to just realize that, everything's going to be out there. So just do the right thing. So at the end of the day, if they do the right thing, then we don't have to worry about who's watching, or who's reading your reports or whatever it is, because everything is out there. So I definitely agree that everything should be out there. If you can do a FOIA request for something that happened 5 years ago, so why can't you know now what happened yesterday?
Exactly.
So no, I'm all for transparency.
I don't think I mentioned your role too, because you're training that next generation. That's part of your role in the force in terms of being, okay, because I just wanted to make sure I think at the beginning I said lieutenant and I didn't say what that meant and what you were doing on the force. So you're actually training these young men and women coming onto the force. You're kind of that first one teaching them about being a sheepdog and guardian, that guardian role.
Absolutely. My team is very, very good at doing that. And, but like I said, it's about the individual, but I really take pride in that. And I love what I do, because you get to touch so many hearts and minds, and you get to change a lot of people in positive ways. And, the nation's capital needs that. We need good men and women here protecting, everyone. We protect everybody. So
I'm very happy that you were there doing that when I bring the kiddos out. I'm always happy that Uncle Rob's out there protecting.
Absolutely.
Well, we had another question about, and I think we kind of hit on this one question about the internal culture of police, blue line, the wall, and how that negative kind of impacts our the ability of modern day policing to actually change kind of that, and I think that gets to that transparency piece, right? So if you have that blue wall of not knowing or not wanting to talk about what happened, and it's, I don't know, I mean, I'm assuming you would think that's a negative impact, but I guess I should ask the question so that you can answer your thoughts of that blue line.
So they ever since I've been a cop, you've heard about the thin blue line, or the thin red line for firefighters it was. But I never saw it as a line that demarcated between us and them. I just saw it as a kind of a brotherhood or sisterhood. Some people think of it differently. Some people think of it as a code of silence. But I just don't, because everything we do is out there in the public. It's out there to be scrutinized. It's out there to be adjudicated. So I really don't see. I understand police unions have a job, and that's where a lot of the conflict is between police unions and U.S. attorneys and things like that. They have a job of protecting their officers or representing their officers. So people give police unions a hard time, but they're just doing their job. Just like people have they're innocent until proven guilty, so are police officers. So it's tough, especially in situations like we've seen in the past year, where everything's right there on camera and they did wrong, but they still have rights. So the union is just doing what they're supposed to do when they protect those guys. That's a tough one.
But I think exactly the way a lot of people feel, they did wrong, but they still have rights. And that's the story of our criminal justice system. That's the story of, so many, we sit and watch trials. I mean, you sit there on Judge Judy, I can watch, be like, they're wrong. They're still a case. I mean, I hate to put it to that, to make it light of it, but I think in so many situations, things are so wrong in our hearts, and we have to, but things have to be adjudicated. So last question, and we have seen, or the question is, do you think the acts of some police officers from the line of duty is worrisome, or is it welcomed?
You said the acts?
the exodus, like the police officers leave.
Oh, the Exodus. Yeah, I was recently talking about this.
But I know in Seattle, we have definitely seen, and not that I'm not in Seattle, but I've heard that there has been some exodus of officers from our Seattle Metro Department. But yeah, so I guess that, how are you guys dealing with the potential exodus of officers?
Well, we're still hiring, but when you lose veteran police officers, then you lose that veteran experience. So it is concerning because you don't want a force full of new folks, because you want them to be able to turn to someone who's been there for a long time, like myself, and ask for advice. So that is troubling, but I understand. No one likes to be hated. No one likes to be scrutinized on such a level that they don't feel is fair. So if that police officer has an opportunity to take a job somewhere else, I can't blame him. I just know that we need the good folks to stay. We need the dedicated folks to stay, and hopefully those guardians and those sheepdogs will stick around because they know. I mean, as a cop, you have to have a thick skin, so you develop that over a number of years. So if a young guy wants to, decides it's not for him, I get it, because you haven't been through a whole lot. But most veterans know that, this time, if they're a good person, then it'll pass. It doesn't affect them. I mean, it doesn't relate to them because they're not those type of cops that people are talking about. But on the same hand, I understand that no one likes to be dumped on all the time, and it hurts. Some of the things that they say hurt, but you gotta have thick skin in this profession. So we've learned that over a number of years.
That is true. Well, I cannot thank you enough for being on the show. We have run out of time. I know folks are watching and have really enjoyed the conversation. I can't thank you time. I can't thank you for coming on. I can't thank you for serving in our military, serving on the streets. Last time I think DC was the inauguration, beginning of 2017, and that was that was a very crazy, intense few days. So thank you in that standpoint too. But just thank you for being my brother. So that's all.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So hopefully I will see you sooner rather than later once this public crisis is over. So, but
absolutely.
It is talk with you. Well, thank you, Robbie. Thank you, Arthur Davis, for coming on today.
I love you, April.
I love you too, Robbie. Just know you can tune in next week. I will be right here in my kitchen welcoming a representative from IAM 751. Our machinists will be in the house talking about labor issues in our community, and yet another topical issue that you will not want to miss. Everyone have a great rest of your day. Bye, Rob. I'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.